Um, so actually to start with, right, just a few words on Earthworm. So indeed, we are not for profit. We are based in Switzerland, but we have a global presence. And we are trying to address the social and environmental impacts in the supply chains of raw materials. So last year we celebrated our 25th anniversary, and historically our action has been fighting against deforestation. So that's where we started working on supply chains of palm oil, of cocoa, of pulp and paper, things like this. To soon realize that you can't really address deforestation in isolation of the social issues of what's happening in the sourcing regions. But then more recently, like 7 years ago, we're like, but what about what's happening on farm? What about farmland? What about soil health? So that's what is bringing me here today. Um, oh, just one thing maybe. And as Kun was saying, so the way we work is really all along the supply chain. Yes, we do have a lot of staff based in sourcing regions because we do a lot of field work, but our fieldwork is also motivated leveraging the power of supply chains, which means that we are working with the co-ops, we are working with the suppliers, the traders, and ultimately the brands to make things happen. So I will illustrate how we do this in the right sense. So soil health. In fact, there are many players in the supply chains which have, there's a business case for them to invest in soil health. Obviously, the farmers are the first one because for their farm, the cost of fertilizer, synthetic fertilizer are still going to go up probably. So if you increase your soil health and find other ways, then you might be more autonomous. You probably also want to have better soil health to make sure that you can maintain yields, especially with those extreme climate events that we're seeing. And also because there's a market for regenerative products, whether it's a trend or something that's going to last, some farmers also want to grab the opportunity to find new markets. For the companies, so I'm not talking here about the companies which are doing greenwashing, but some of them have motivation to really invest in soil health. Some of them have made commitments, public commitments, to follow the trajectory in line with the Paris Agreement. So they have scope 3 commitments. They have committed to the SBTI. So that's one motivation. Uh, and now we are seeing more and more companies really worried about the resilience of their supply. Are they going to be able to continue sourcing from some places? So the one example that we have right now, for example, with cocoa, the prices are just surging. And one of the reasons is that really in the sourcing region, especially Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, the plantations are in a very bad shape and soil health is an issue there. But we can also see with wheat, like the yields with the extreme climate events are a bit going down. So there's really the question of resilience, and somehow they know that resilience starts with good soil health. And then in the middle, the suppliers, so the co-ops, the traders, um, uh, why do they are also interested in soil health? Well, because some of their clients are asking for this, but also to retain the farmers. There are more and more farmers asking advice about how to improve soil health on their farms. So they know that they need to a bit put with that game and be able to answer the farmers. And by the way, it's not only in the supply chain. Some organizations on a territory also have a huge interest in soil health. For example, the water agencies, for them, it makes a clear business case if the water resource is protected both in quantity and in quality. So they have a business case for investing in soil health. But then the question is how to create an alignment so that all these people work towards that common goal. And it's a bit complicated, or much more complicated when we look at what they need to align on. In fact, first, they would need to align on what really is the objective. So soil health often is one, but what else? What is at stake on the territory? Is there a question of biodiversity? Is there a question of water? What other challenges need to be addressed? So align on what's the ambition, what are the objectives. Then again, because everything is so closely linked to context, what are the kind of agricultural practices that need to change or that farmers need to adopt to make sure that those impacts are going to be reached? And how will we measure the performance of the practice? It's fine to say that a farmer is adopting a practice, but is he doing it well? So how performant is the practice that is the new practice that is being implemented? And of course, quite key, what's the cost of that transition and who's going to pay? How are the costs going to be allocated between the different actors? How much will the farmer be rewarded for the performance and the progress towards performance? So we have tried to navigate our way around, aligning actors on all those questions. And the way we've done it is, first, we have created a measurement framework. So I will not enter into too many details, but you will see later it's a set of indicators that basically talk to each level of the supply chain that people can relate to. With that measurement framework come a cost modeling tool. So depending on the ambition on certain indicators, some practices will need to be put in place and they have a different cost. So we are able to model that cost in a given context. And then we've also been building quite a lot of technical support material, both for farmers, but also for the farm advisors and the technicians of the cooperatives. The measurement framework, we've done it in partnership with the scientific committee. In fact, it's both scientists and practitioners, like people who have been supporting farmers in transition, the pioneers, for the last 10 years, and who are really hands in the earth. And so together with scientists, it's quite a good committee that we're having. So we are proposing some indicators, they validate or not, and we need to study more. But also we have the users, so a user committee. So we have companies, we have the suppliers, we have some farmers, and they are trying to implement the framework and they give us feedback on how practical it is for them. So the framework is called Agri-Boussole, and I will not enter into too many details, but just as I said, it's a 3-level thing because not all indicators are equally useful for the different levels of the supply chain. So we have some indicators which are quite global, that the companies are using to sustain their claims. So we're talking about storage factor, emission factor. We have a score for soil health, a score for biodiversity. These are the kind of indicators that companies find useful for their extra financial reporting and things like this. But then linked to those big indicators, the global indicators, we have agronomic performance indicators. Those ones, they reflect really how the kind of levers that farmers can activate to reach impact on the global indicators. So for example, we know that for soil health, one practice is soil coverage. So we are monitoring the duration of living soil cover, or we are monitoring the quantity of carbon that's being returned to soil and humified, things like this. And those indicators are the basis of the farmers' incentivization, so the premiums that they are receiving. They reflect both the cost of practices and the reward. And then we have a number of other indicators, more technical, that's just for technical support and that are being used by farmers and the technicians that are supporting them. I was talking about the living soil cover duration. So for those indicators to work, we want things to be quite objective and we want that measurement to be scalable. So for example, to monitor the living soil cover duration, we are using remote sensing and we are calculating the NDVI and we have calibrated the indicator in the regions where we work to assess actually if a cover crop is doing the job or not. Is it enough? So we are able to have that indicator quite easily, and also to compare a farmer to the average of his small agricultural region. So it's quite an interesting one that we have been developing in partnership with a startup from Brittany, France, called CareMap. And so that technical framework is one tool of a complete toolbox, as I said. So of course we have our own monitoring, reporting, verification tool that we call My Living Soils. When co-ops have other data systems, we can also use those. But in case the supply chain actors we work with don't, we have our own MRV system. The agroeconomic modeling tool I talked about earlier. So it means that depending on the ambition that the actors have in the territory, it will require more or less or different practices to be implemented, and that will have a cost. So we are able to model that so that then the different actors can decide how much to invest and how to share the cost between themselves. And then we have a whole training syllabus also. So now in practice with the actors, how do we proceed? So we first start building a presence on a territory and building trust. So here you see the Hauts-de-France region in the north of France. This is where it all started, our Living Soils program started back in 2018. And we started, like a Nestle knocked at the door and they said, oh, actually, we want 100 of our key ingredients sourced from France to be regenerative. How do we do this? So we went to the Hauts-de-France. It's a big supply shed. And we started working with some of their suppliers and some of the farmers. And we did the same with a number of them that you can see on that slide. It's good. We manage now to embark more than 500 farms in that region, but it's limited. Also, in terms of impact, it's limited because if it's only one off-taker of the whole crop rotation, that one off-taker, even if it's a Nestle, they can't actually pay for the transition of the whole farm. So then the game is to construct a collective action or a multi-stakeholder project with the other players of the crop rotation, which are complementary. And we've been trying different models in that way. So in the Hauts-de-France, this is starting with 3 co-ops in the middle and the off-takers. So we are trying to have at the same time grains and oilseeds and beetroot and potato covered. But the model I'm going to talk about and finish my speech with is the real co-op centered model. So for example, in the eastern region of France, we've been working with a co-op called Vivesia. It's a big cooperative. They are collecting a number of things across the crop rotation, and their profile allowed them to build such a project. So what we've been doing with them, and so we are trialing some other models quite similar in other parts of France with other co-ops. So what we've been doing with them is actually help the co-op to build a value proposition for their clients. So instead of having each and every client of the co-op knocking at the door and saying, oh, these are my specs for soil health and regeneration, can you please implement that with the farmers which are supplying me? And then the co-op ends up with so many specifications. They took upon themselves actually to propose a kind of technical framework. So we help them build a technical framework. Then they also modeled how much it would cost to help 1,000 farmer transition. And so then they said, okay, how are we going to fund that? Of course, a big part of the financing comes from the premiums that are being paid by the co-op clients. So that's 90% of the budget. Part of the project also is public money. So we managed to answer a call for projects from Europe that's channeled through the region, and we got the money. The farmers are contributing a small, tiny bit. And all that money is used to, of course, reward farmers, pay for the transition costs, and reward their progress as they go. A lot of this also is employed for training. And it's both the training of farmers, but it's also the upskilling of the technicians in the co-op and hiring new technicians that actually are not so specialized in one crop, but really have a systems approach and are able to give advice to the farmers so that they reconfigure their whole system at farm level. There's money employed in the measurement and monitoring and reporting and verification aspects. We are also trying to work with some insurers to find some insurance schemes to de-risk even more the transition for the farmers, and then there's project management costs. So for now it's a 3-year-long project because now everybody's trying that model. The farmers are quite full on. So the target was 1,000, and already in the first year 200 enrolls, and we have 400 lined up. So it's going quite well, and it's quite a number of tons of ingredients. So we would like to see more of those models, because we think that in terms of scale up, that's something that can really work. And I think that's it for now. Thank you.